When these first come out, a whole industry's created and everybody's buying these. All of a sudden, you get saturation and sustainable and improvement. But there's a whole opportunity, the whole world of people in Silicon Valley, all over America, to go in and redo these plants and redo these facilities. And I don't have much time left, but anybody want to talk about just what transformation and what economy that could create by people going through and refurbishing their plants?
I'll just really quickly fire it off because we see it across the board. We work with a lot of different companies. You know, the opportunity is tremendous, you know, whether they're the small or the medium or the large companies, because again, you know, the kids now, they program these things, you know, and so they're in there, hey, look, we can do this. Barcode readers? Oh, we don't need barcode. I mean, you know, this is the barcode reader now and so forth. And so they're really implementing it. And so it does allow you to, you know, to do these types of implementation. But back to, you know, Mr. Poonan's point, you know, we've got to make sure that we're very secure about this. So, you know, and again, in our classes, whether it's high school or junior college, whatever, you know, we now see that a lot of this type of thing, we're just doing good hygiene. For example, do not plug this into, you know, just any old computer. I go to a machine shop, $1 million machine tool recharging my phone, which could have a virus on it, right? And so these are the types of things that we really have to start teaching them and so forth, but the opportunity is tremendous.
Thank you for your indulgence, Mr.
Representative Guthrie, just one other point, if I may. There's a whole suite of capabilities that we're starting to bring to these enterprise devices. We actually call it mobility DNA, but the idea is taking the standard operating system that we might be using, Android by way of example, and layering a whole host of enterprise-centric security on top. So, and we're working closely actually with VMware on this sort of thing. So as these devices, these internet endpoints are deployed in these manufacturing facilities, being able to make it secure all the way at the device level. So we have a network of secure devices instead of just trying to secure the network. And that's an investment we're making to basically serve enterprise in an even more secure way than we might find in traditional consumer devices. That, and the last thing I would just end on the word silos. I think there's tremendous opportunity to bring silos down across what many of my colleagues here spoke about, from farm to fork, if you will. So for being able to share data from you know, where that seed was planted in the farm field and be able to carry that data all the way through to optimize the harvest, that out to the transportation carriers for just-in-time delivery, and then ultimately getting to a retail location where, you know, we can all enjoy that in a much more efficient way and in a way that allows us to, in a more cost-effective way, to reach more people. So I think that the data silo opportunity is tremendous as we start to collect more and more data across all the different elements of the supply chain. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the indulgence.
Thank you. The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Kurfess, I wanted to focus on something that you had provided in your written testimony, not just ask you, but ask the rest of the panel for their feedback as well. There's no doubt IoT and manufacturing will help to grow our manufacturing operations and will generate new and higher paying jobs. However, those jobs will be filled by individuals that are highly trained. Furthermore, those individuals will need to be continuously trained, and that's what I want to focus on. In the latest and state-of-the-art technologies to keep U.S. manufacturing operations at the forefront of this rapidly advancing technology wave. Thus, a culture of lifelong learning must be instilled and supported in our workforce. If you look at our high schools and STEM schools and trade schools for 18 to 19-year-olds, I am struck by the opportunities that might be available to incorporate more of this lifelong learning culture into curriculum at an earlier age so that it is not incumbent upon a company in order to do that. And when you look at a company of 20, 30 people, even startups or two, 3 individuals, it's just simply not sustainable to offer that type of learning and sort of up-to-date type education that's required in order to keep a well-trained workforce. I've already spoken too long. Share with me what you think the right kind of learning platforms are in order for our country to be a leader for the next 20 and 30 years so that these are not jobs that are not remaining in the U.S.
Sure. So really quickly, you know, the first thing is, I mean, I can tell you, we have turbine blade production. We do a lot of work in turbine blade production. So we have turbine blade production machines. We're doing research and so forth. And typically, you need about 15, 20 years of experience before we turn you loose on those in you know, production operations. We have developed gaming interfaces, high-performance computing that can really, you know, it just pounds that problem to dust. And they're gaming interfaces, and we have high school kids who are now programming these types of machines and so forth. So it's a whole different way of learning. And as I mentioned before, we can even take a look at, who is, really excelling. People think, oh, engineering, I've got to be a super genius. Well, you have to be fairly good at math and so forth, but if we can start to really identify those students early on and start to work them forward. They don't necessarily have to go into engineering. Maybe they're going to go into the shops and so forth and get the right type of training. But it's a two-way street. So the infrastructure is coming into place. We have a number of these different, if again, you look at Manufacturing USA, these centers that are working with the local and in particular the community colleges, the associate's degrees and so forth, where they're saying, yeah, what is the next generation that we need to be moving forward, and let's work that into the curriculum. And that's not only for the two-year degrees, but for the continuous learning. And then we also see a lot of the professional societies that they have a lot of curriculum developed that's deployable, whether it's on the web or interactive and so forth. So a lot of that technology is moving out. But I agree, you've got to build it in. Universities, I think, have done a good job with lifelong learning. We now have to start to propagate that down into the K through 12. It's getting there, but once it's there, I think the access for those students and for that workforce is available. And it also does respond very quickly to the needs of the workforce and the needs of the market.
Speech after the president, it didn't. But what is it? And thank goodness I have young staff to explain to me. I'm glad you're having the hearing because it makes some of us who don't typically live with these things shed light on different aspects of the smart manufacturing and the Internet of Things. One of our witnesses mentioned manufacturing is one of the sectors that is investing the most in IoT. I have a district that's predominantly petrochemical refineries, chemical plants, extraction, and I know they're looking for every way they can using technology to both to produce their products safely or cleaner. And doing more smart manufacturing can make operations both environmental, safer, and more efficient. But Congress needs to do more to prepare our workforce for those changing needs in manufacturers. Mr. Kurfess, you mentioned in your testimony the importance of instilling a culture of lifelong learning and of helping to train our manufacturing workforce in the data science and IT skills that workers need. Some people that need job training the most are the unemployed, and one of the biggest obstacles they face is getting into that technical training is the cost of it. Can you elaborate on possible ways Congress can help this technical training being made more affordable, as well as help support a culture of lifelong learning broadly?
Sure, I'm very happy to do that, Congressman. In terms of, I know that there are a lot of initiatives that are really supporting the community colleges. These are the two-year colleges and so forth. They're very cost-effective for the training of the workforce and so forth, and there's a lot of leveraging that goes on there. We heard about some of the online courses, that are available today, even via YouTube and so forth. And actually, at least our younger generation, they learn and they think in a different way, right? So, when I was a student, I might have had one book to look at or maybe two books to look at. Now they go out there and they get, 10, 20, 30 different examples and so forth. So really not only just saying, yes, we can make sure that we can, support the community colleges and some of the professional societies that have, these types of course offering, technical training offering, but also the ability to basically say, yeah, let's make sure that we're starting to leverage some of these new approaches to teaching and so forth, and that we understand that they're out there so that it comes out there very quickly. And by the way, these are also very important, not just because they're lower cost, but they're very nimble. They can respond quickly to new technology as it comes along. So, if you have some YouTube videos out there, you can learn anything from fixing, a faucet, all the way, to, hey, let's go do a calculus problem, right? But as new technology comes along, it's amazing, right? You can go to YouTube, you can go to some of these different courses, even MOOCs, these massively online, courses and so forth that some institutions offer for free, right? And so how do we promote that? How do we then, once you have that, I think the next key thing is certification. Oh yes, you are certified in that course so that when they go to your company, and by the way, it's interesting, when I think of people think manufacturing, make a car, those petrochemical plants are enormous manufacturers within the United States. And so how do we know, right, when that company says, yeah, I want to hire somebody, that, yeah, this person has the right credentials. It's great that they have a degree from, let's say, a Georgia Tech, but what about just some of the smaller credentials that are going along? So a lot of that credentialing, again, getting back to some of the standards that we're looking at.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from California is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Lara and Ranking Member Schakowsky, for calling this hearing. As a former small business owner myself, I know that a business that's not growing and evolving is a business that is not succeeding. As an engineer, I've studied the rise and proliferation of connected devices and for their potential to help businesses and government evolve and better serve their consumers and constituents. For example, a company in my district that testified last June in this hearing on the Internet of Things, LaRue Electronics, uses connected microphones and sensors to help protect property and also help law enforcement detect and rapidly respond to gunshots. On the public service side, the Internet of Things technology has helped local governments and firefighters monitor and prevent and fight back firefighters in Southern California, for example. Recently, the House passed my amendment to study the use of drones to detect and fight wildfires. However, I also know that as with any rapid growing technology, we must encourage innovation smartly, responsibly, and with our eyes wide open. We're constantly learning that virtually any connection can be hacked, so cybersecurity is an area that businesses and government will have to pay extremely close attention to and invest a lot of resources. Another issue that we need to hold our businesses to a high standard on is workforce preparedness. As our companies evolve, our workforce must necessarily evolve as well. Ideally, this evolution will come in the form of education and retraining. This was an important issue that I brought up during our markup of the Self-Drive Act, and it's an important issue in every environment. For example, Southern California happens to be, I was told when I got elected to Congress, I was reminded that Southern California is the largest manufacturing area in the entire country. I was pleased and surprised to hear that. So this is an issue that not only is important to my district, but important to one of the biggest economies in the world, which is California. My first question is to Dr. Kurfess. You have the advantage of a bird's eye view of the industrial Internet of Things through your work with a variety of companies. So can you describe briefly what practices you've seen that help workers adapt to and learn how to better use new technologies?
Sure, that's it's relatively straightforward. Some of the practices that are out there actually get to some of the discussions we've had about just hygiene, right? You know, don't plug your phone, you know, into the $1 million machine tool out there because it might have a virus on it and so forth. But some of the other practices really go along the lines of, you know, understanding what people are comfortable with, you know, in terms of using and so forth, and letting them make use of that technology, you know, in place. As I said before, we actually have developed some software where you're doing a Pokemon type of program where, you know, you're looking for the guy to try and capture, but that guy you're trying to capture is a flaw in your production cycle and so forth, and you capture those. So you actually start to bring these together. The Internet of Things, people are very comfortable in general. It just doesn't matter who you are. People have the smartphones now, and they're very comfortable using it. And so the idea really is, yeah, can you bring that comfort together so that, you know, that they make use of it in a very easy and natural way. So that's one of the things. The other thing, again, and we've heard from several companies here, again, just continuous learning, you know, to make it easy, to make it, you know, rewarded, to provide the time so that the people in the plant can do some learning. And we're not talking hours and hours of time. Typically, it's just, yeah, just take a look at this thing, you know, we can track your progress and so forth, and, you know, making sure that they're up to speed on what a company needs to have them up to speed on, whatever that might be. Today it's going to be, and I think, again, you know, coming out of California, you realize this, whatever's going on today may not make a whole lot of difference tomorrow in terms of technology. That's how rapidly things are changing.
It's interesting that you described the example of the cell phone and how that could interfere with the opportunity to, unfortunately, have an infiltration in your system. I learned, again, through this committee, is one of the subcommittees on health, is that some hospitals, and a lot of people now realize that infections, if you're gonna get an infection, you're probably gonna get it at a hospital more than anywhere else, that it wasn't some incredibly expensive process to bring down the infection rate in hospitals other than having the discipline of everybody washing their hands at every opportunity. Something as simple as soap. But what I'm getting at is, I think it's important for us to teach the next generation of workforce that even though they find these things to be so darn convenient and think that it's the answer to everything, it actually, if not handled properly with simple measures, you could actually cause a disaster or catastrophe that is unintended. So I think it's important for us to realize that sometimes the answers are complicated, sometimes the answers are really simple about basic discipline.